Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of many admitted student programs throughout the month of April. My name is Dornan Xie, and I am an admission counselor here at Pitzer College. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started in our program today. We've made some time changes to the April 23rd event, so make sure that you check back on our website to make sure that you have the right times in your calendar. That is an important event with our student affairs staff, where we're talking about things like reopening for this fall, housing, orientation, first year seminars, all of those things. So you definitely don't want to miss that date. We have programming throughout the month of April, mostly on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You do not have to re-register for each event. Your registration with us today will get you the links to all of the Zoom events programming throughout the month of April. Parents and co-pilots are welcome to join for all of the programs. You can either join from a separate Zoom link or share one with your students. So please invite your parents to come as well. It's definitely a college search process for them as well. For today, we do have the chat box open, so use the chat box to chat with your future classmates. But if you have a question for our panelists or for our presenters today, make sure that you're using the Q&A box located on the bottom of your Zoom window. And lastly, we'll be taking breaks throughout the program today. After each session, we'll take a little short 10-minute, 15-minute break, so to make sure that you can grab some water, get a snack, go to the restroom, things like that. And that's all for our housekeeping today. So to start off our program, we have our Robert Redford Conservancy students, fellows. I'm going to start welcoming them onto stage today, right now. There we go. And I'll pass it over to Olivia to start off our session.
Hello. It's so nice to see your guys' faces. So I'm Olivia. I'm a junior at Pitzer, and I'm going to be kind of moderating for our Robert Redford Conservancy Fellows. So I'm not going to talk that much about myself, but I'm really excited to talk to you guys. So can we do some introductions? So just name, year, whatever that means, pronouns, and then your major, and then how long you've been a Robert Redford Conservancy Fellow. So Thomas, do you want to start?
Sure. So my name's Thomas. I also go by Tomas. My major, I study economics and environmental policy. Pronouns are he, him. And then you also said, what was that? What else was it?
Your year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Probably next fall, but I could also graduate in the spring as well. So I'm a rising senior, but who knows? Corona.
Perfect. Emma, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Emma. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Seattle. I'm a senior now, so I'll just be graduating in a month or so. I'm an environmental analysis and Spanish double major, and I've been at the Conservancy for 3 years now.
Awesome. And then Malaya?
Hi, I'm Malaya. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a junior with a self-design major in community health with a concentration on Indigenous studies, and I've been a fellow since 2019.
And thank you all so much for being here. So we're going to start with a very basic question, which is, what is the RRC? And what do you do there? So I honestly would love to hear from all of you, but Emma, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a funny thing to explain because it's new and it does a lot of cool environmental programming with the school and the surrounding area. But I kind of think about it as two different things that are connected to each other. So if you guys want to pop in about this as well. But the first thing is the actual physical space. It is a building that is located just north of our campus on the Bernard Field Station, which is a large area of protected native landscaping in Southern California. And the building itself actually used to be a polio infirmary, which is really interesting, but has recently in the last couple of years been renovated and is one of the first net zero energy buildings in Southern California. It houses a lot of our programming as well as a lot of classes. So if you take environmental classes, arts classes, science classes, you very well might come up there to take some of your classes as well. And then it's also the programming side of the Conservancy, which is designed to get the Pitzer and broader community engaged in issues of environmental justice in Southern California. So we do all kinds of cool workshops, bringing speakers to campus, doing environmental justice tours of the area. And then also we have the fellows who are students at Pitzer who are involved in this programming and are also doing a lot of really cool work this year, more on the policy side, which is pretty awesome. So if you guys want to step in and talk more about that, that'd be great.
I think that's a little like that was a really good explanation. I honestly don't know what else I could really add other than just kind of off the cuff expanding more on what the fellows are. I kind of identify us as just a group of students who are genuinely interested in protecting and preserving the local environment. And so through the Robert Redford Conservancy, we've been able to connect with local community-driven organizations throughout the Inland Empire to start really building practical and systemic solutions to some of the more environmentally related issues in the area. But Malaya, do you want to expand?
Sure. So I think I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing right now since we're online, and I'm sure you're curious about that. How do you practice conservation? How do you do all these cool conservancy things when you're not even in person? So for us, what we've been working on is a little bit more on the policy side, like Emma talked a little bit about. So we have a couple groups that I think everyone will share a little more specifically what their groups are working on, but we're working more with the communities in Inland Empire to kind of form policies around all these different issues, around agriculture, around air quality, and around tree planting, around all these other super cool projects. And so I think everyone else can share a little bit more about what they're personally working on, but that's how we're trying to stay engaged right now since we're online.
Yeah, do you guys want to share what your groups are individually working on?
Yeah, sure. I can start. I am on the tree planting group, which has been really cool. I've been over the last semester, been doing research about trees as pollution remediators in phytoremediation, which is trees actually taking pollution out of the soil and groundwater, and then also in terms of taking in CO2 as well. This has been a really cool project. We've been specifically looking at the city of Riverside, which is also in the Inland Empire nearby here. And we've been actually working, I have with my thesis and with the Conservancy, working with politicians at the city of Riverside and the city council to do a lot of really cool climate action related policy and activities, which has been really great. So we've been researching about how trees can be used as pollution remediators and are coming up with kind of a tree planting plan and best practices for the city of Riverside as they move forward with their landscaping for the city, which is really great and incredibly important too in the Inland Empire because of the logistics industry. Environmental justice issues are really, really prevalent here, and air quality is really bad. And so this is an opportunity to kind of engage on those issues as a student as well.
Yeah, I can jump onto what I've been working on, which is actually agricultural land mitigation policy. And giving you a bit of history into like why we're looking into this and what exactly that means is, the area surrounding the Claremont Consortium, like the Inland Empire region, since the 1980s has lost around 24 to like 30% of its farmland. And so because of that, you've seen this rise in unsustainable industries moving in, namely logistics, like Emma was saying, which to clarify is essentially like the distribution and movement of goods, think like Amazon distribution factories. But those specific areas like the Inland Empire region has like roots deep in agriculture. And so there has to be this history, or with this history of like sustainable economic sectors, there's a different model for sustainable growth for the Inland Empire. And so what we've been working on is developing a policy that essentially every time there's some sort of business development going on, it will be replaced by an equal amount of agricultural land. And so to do that, like Emma was saying, we've started by scouring the internet for different or similarly related policies. We found plenty of similar policies, but nothing necessarily around regenerative agricultural systems. And so we've been working with some pretty prominent groups in the Inland Empire, specifically the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District, to get kind of a better idea on what exactly our policy can do and how we can best orient it to make a large impact on overall preservation of the environment in the Inland Empire. And so the policy, through the policy, we're trying to create like these regenerative systemic avenues, specifically for farmers to be able to connect with, say, landless people or people who already don't own property, to kind of set up stewardship arrangements for them, So that way the land can be protected long-term because of its capacity as a carbon sink.
Yes, and so I'm working on the Right to Breathe ordinance group. And so for us, we were initially focused on creating an ordinance for the city of Riverside. And so in general, since the passing of the Clean Air Act, the Inland Empire has not met any of the standards set for like just air quality in general. This is due to air pollution from diesel trucks, delivery, train traffic. So all of those things that Tomas was talking about around logistics. And so the initial kind of portion of our work was kind of trying to create this ordinance. And so that required a lot of research around, what are these different approaches to the right to breathe, like the Clean Air Act itself, and then like what are different perspectives we can take when we're writing a Clean Air Act, right? So a human rights perspective, a grassroots perspective, all of these different kind of levels, historical, academic, community-based. And so we attended a bunch of different community meetings where these kind of community members voiced their concerns around air quality, and then also kind of attending other meetings for the Southern California, air quality, so the SCAQMD meetings, to learn a little bit more about the warehouse indirect source rule, which I can talk a little bit more about if you want to know. But basically it's about this kind of policy to make sure that warehouses are leaning towards better air quality regulations. And so after that, we kind of reached out to some more community groups, and we decided that in the fall, so if y'all are here in the fall, we'll be doing a symposium kind of at a multi-sectoral level, right? So including people from the grassroots level to industry, all of these different levels to kind of culminate in some type of statement or some type of 3-point plan for these demands that the community has for clean air and ways to kind of put this into action. And then after our last meeting, we're also going to be working on putting forth, continuing the work of the ordinance. So kind of a 2-in-1 thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. That's so interesting. Also, I want to reiterate, I put this answer in the Q&A, but someone asked what the Inland Empire is, which is a super fair question. We're all very used to like knowing the things around us. But if you're not from Southern California, the Inland Empire is essentially the area around us. It's kind of adjacent to Los Angeles. It's also kind of a fun name just because like we're not actually very near water. We're about like an hour away from the beach. So we're inland. So that's kind of all the communities that the RRC is working with is going to be those Inland Empire communities, as they were discussing. So in kind of a more general sense, how do you see environmental sustainability work at Pitzer? Because you guys do very specific work with the RRC, but how do you see environmental sustainability at Pitzer? Does someone want to start? I can also forcefully popcorn it to someone.
I can start. I, as someone who also works in admissions and is an EA major, this was definitely something that, drew me to Pitzer in all aspects, not just the opportunity to work at the Conservancy, but also just the way that the school is in general. I think there's kind of 2 ways to look at it. There's like the physical structure and landscape of the space, which if you guys have gotten the chance to visit Pitzer, I hope you will have experienced that. Obviously, that hasn't been much of an opportunity this year. But you can see in the landscaping that we have on campus, there's lots of cacti and succulents and all that kind of stuff around. That was an intentional decision by Pitzer to change its landscaping to make it more friendly for the climate that we're in here, which is quasi-desert environment. And we were able to reduce our water usage by about 50% due to that change, and then also some change to the way that our buildings are run as well. Almost half of our buildings are LEED certified. Basically anything that's been built recently is, which is very cool as well. And it has things like green roofs and gray water systems and all that kind of stuff, solar panels. And then there's also all of the opportunities on campus and off campus to engage with environmental issues, either through the environmental analysis major or taking some of all of the amazing course offerings that we have in that. Clubs on campus, we have clubs that do environmental education, that do environmental advocacy within the school, the Conservancy as well. If you guys want to add in, I'm kind of just going off here a little bit about it.
Sure. The question was essentially, what does environmental sustainability look like at Pitzer, right? I think like the best way to understand that is kind of looking at the environmental analysis major, which is kind of understanding it as an interdisciplinary approach to solving environmental issues. So like, at least from the way that the Conservancy approaches it, it feels like, we're looking at these different policies from a multidisciplinary lens, and being able to look at it through the lens of economics on top of like environmental science, with like the lens of sociology on top of environmental sustainability. And so you're really coming at a single issue for practical solutions that pull from different disciplines to actually build something that's going to be cohesive and last long term. At least that's kind of my understanding of what the model of environmental sustainability that Pitzer's trying to promote. And also along the community-oriented end, like we do a lot of community-oriented projects, whether it be working with the COST program or other Robert Redford Conservancy partners. So being able to do that and have a more realistic lens of tackling environmental sustainability, it just functions better than I'd say other institutions, the way that they look at environmental issues.
Yeah, I think everyone covered everything. I think for me, when I think about environmental sustainability at Pitzer, I think a lot about the community relationships that we formed, and then I guess specifically through the Conservancy, which is kind of like a big part of Pitzer. I think a lot about the relationships that we have with the Tongva community. We're currently working, or I don't know if it's actually happened already, but working on getting a land use agreement, basically that allows the Tongva tribe to access the Conservancy itself. And so kind of the space itself offers these opportunities to carry out very material changes for environmental sustainability, right? So allowing, Indigenous Tongva folks to access the land, to be able to gather there, to be able to hold ceremony there, and, being able to kind of carry out these very concrete needs and concrete kind of changes that I think are very important for Pitzer to kind of carry out as an institution. So that's what I think of. And I think also like we have programs like LEAP, and that means we're working with schools in the area and providing environmental education. So I think also a big part of environmental sustainability is, right, how do we reach out to the communities around us? And so that's what I think of.
Yeah, I think those are really great answers. I also think I think you all have kind of touched on it, but I think just very generally, why is environmental sustainability important to you? Emma, do you want to start? I feel like there's a lot of answers.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think it, especially with our generation, and obviously all of you who are voluntarily coming to this panel probably feel this way as well, but climate change and environmental justice are like two of the largest issues that we're going to be facing in our lifetimes. And so it's really important, whether you're choosing to study environmental analysis specifically, or you just want to be in a place that centers that as a major issue and get involved. I think that's one of the things that did draw me to Pitzer, and I feel very strongly about that. But I think, yeah, that can take a number of forms, and being in a community that just cares about that and is looking towards that, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think for me, environmental sustainability is just tied into every single issue, whether you look at sociological issues, economic issues, just political issues around the world. I feel like everything ties into the environment, and the environmental sustainability gives you a way to look at things a little bit more dynamically, as well as a different way to approach the specific political issues. And I feel like there's always a solution or avenue to solving any big global or local issue through the track of environmental sustainability. And so that's kind of why I'm interested in it. And I think that it's just applicable to everything. And it's something that we should be concerned about long term. So, looking at and trying to blend it with economics and economic policy was kind of my goal. But yeah.
I think for me, as a non-EA major, I was considering being an EA major, but I think it was most important for me to kind of create my own major and incorporate different aspects of that. And I think I'm going to try to answer some of these people's questions in my answer. But I think you don't have to be an EA major to pursue environmental sustainability. I'd like to say that. And I think there are a lot of opportunities outside of that. And for me personally, environmental sustainability is something that, as everyone has said, is very relevant to our current moment, but I think it's something also that has been relevant for many years before, right? For a lot of people of color, for Indigenous people, for people who have been living and working with the land. And so I think for me, at least that was the perspective that I came to college with, and that, environmental sustainability is, I would say, a way of life. It's the way that you live your life in relation to other people, the way you live your life in relation to the land, the way you live your life in relation to the plants, to the animals. And so I think that's where I come from. And so I think if I can tie that into my major, right, I self-designed my own major. And so I didn't need to be in the EA track itself to kind of create these connections. And the self-design major itself allowed me to incorporate aspects of environmental sustainability, aspects of environmental analysis into this major without having to be directly involved in it. And I think that holds true for a lot of majors because we have a lot of cross-listed classes, right, that aren't just like, you just have to take EA at Pitzer, there's EA at Pomona, and then there's also cross-listed classes. Like sometimes Asian American Studies has like an EA collaborative class, all these different things. So it doesn't have to be strictly within that.
Yeah, and I think that was a really great answer to this question that we had in the chat about sustainability being accessible to non-EA majors. And I kind of want to expand that to ask, like, how is the RRC accessible to people that aren't necessarily EA majors or aren't RRC fellows?
I can take that one. Well, anyone's able to apply after after the end of your freshman year. You can submit an application for the fellowship, and we're also possibly thinking about extending that into like after your first semester freshman year, but that's to be determined next year. But it is only accessible to Pitzer students, and I think that was one of the other questions in the chat. But we're only Pitzer students are allowed to apply. You don't necessarily need to be an EA major like Maya. But if you guys want to expand on that too, please feel free.
Yeah, I would just add that even outside of like being a fellow, which you can pursue as any kind of major, there are a lot of opportunities to be engaging with the Conservancy in the events that we put on, the workshops that we organize, and also in taking classes, as I mentioned before, and experiencing the physical space of the Conservancy. So even if you aren't a Conservancy fellow or you don't have the time to commit to that, that experience, you're still able to engage with all of the cool things that we're trying to do here as well.
Thank you for that. Malaya, you can go also.
Oh, no, I didn't really have anything to add. I was just like, oh, do I need to add something? So go ahead.
You're perfect. This next question is also from a student, which is, what drew you to the RRC and what's your favorite part of working in the program? Malaya, do you want to start?
Yes, since I had that awkward answer, I think I'll start. I think what drew me to the Conservancy was a lot of the potential that the space has, and I think specifically as my major states, Indigenous studies. So I was really interested in the working relationships that we have with the Tongva community, and kind of like, what does that look like? And I think that's really what drew me. And then also just the opportunity to work with other like-minded fellows. I think that was super cool. And I remember, I think maybe it was diversity program or something, but we had like, I don't even remember, admissions, some type of tour, and just like my mom came back and she's like, these people are so cool. And I was like, I want to work with these super cool people. So I think that's what I felt about it.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Thomas, go.
No, you're good.
I remember I applied to the Conservancy my freshman year, so that's the earliest that applications were accepted at the time. And I think I was just really excited about the possibility. I came into Pitzer wanting to be an EA major, and I was really enjoying that part of my academic experience, but I was really looking for opportunities to be able to engage in those issues outside of a classroom setting, and the Conservancy represented a really good opportunity for that. So that's what really drew me in. Additionally, just like Malaya said, like the community that is the Conservancy and being, part of like with all these really cool people, like-minded students, and also the professors and the directors that the Conservancy has had while I've been here has been a really amazing opportunity. And just seeing how the Conservancy changes year by year based on, what the students are interested in, what relationships the Conservancy is cultivating with, other organizations at the time has been a really great opportunity as well.
Yeah, I remember for me, when I came in to interview, actually, the admissions fellow that I was interviewing with was also a Conservancy fellow, and I didn't know beforehand, but I started talking about environmental sustainability and my work in environmental sustainability in high school, and he's like, you should join the RRC, you should join the RRC, you should look into this. And so he was really pressuring me into it, and I didn't even know what he was talking about at the time. But then I kind of went through my freshman year and I met a couple RRC fellows who are seniors at the time, and just kind of became close friends with them. And then I finally went up to the space and I just fell in love with the actual conservancy, like the space in the building, being able to see it and like all of its LEED certifications. And I just thought it was a really great opportunity to actually do effective environmental advocacy and do actual work that has a genuine impact. And on top of that, we also have an attached board of friends who are professionals and people that are donors that focus specifically on the Robert Redford Conservancy, and they do a lot of corporate environmental work. So I know like some of them are environmental consultants or have done work in policy oriented positions. So it's also a great opportunity to be able to connect with them, see what they're doing, and just be able to meet them and get to know what life is going to be like outside of the Robert Redford Conservancy as well. And so it was just a cool group of people doing good work and an opportunity to have connections long term. And so I was just really excited about it and pressured to join, first of all. And it was a great, I loved that I was pressured to join. It ended up being fantastic. So.
Obviously, it's been very different this year, kind of being online and what that has looked like. But can you talk a little bit about when we're on campus, what being an RRC fellow actually looks like day to day or week to week?
We both just did that. Just too polite. It's definitely been different this year, obviously, and there's a lot of things I miss just getting to actually see all the other fellows in person and having that experience. We would do these weekly or every other week lunches in the dining hall where we would all collect at one big table and talk about the work that we had been doing and what we wanted to plan for the future, but also just be able to connect and catch up and talk about classes and other stuff that was going on. So I definitely miss that. Obviously, also all of the amazing panelists that we bring in and speakers. We would always have the opportunity, often at least, to meet with them afterwards and go out to a meal or just have some kind of discussion with them, which is a really great opportunity, which we are trying to replicate online, but it's definitely not the same experience. So those are some of the things about kind of being on campus and being a fellow that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I think another big change is being able to collectively sit down and work together on your project. And I love, the chance to be able to connect with people, see what they're doing, and do a little bit more creative work when we're in person. So it's a bummer that we still don't have those opportunities online, or it's just a little bit different. But we've still been able to, somewhat replicate it and do our online Zoom sessions, collectively work on different documents, connect with different people. But yeah, it was a completely somewhat different experience. But there's also been great opportunities to do things remotely. I feel like even though we've been remote, we've still been connecting somewhat at an even more frequent rate. So it's been cool to check in with everybody, see where they're at, what they're doing. Because everyone's still kind of working on other environmental projects even outside of the Conservancy. So it's been super neat. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add. I would say the biggest difference is that we go places together in person. I would say that's the biggest difference. Go to events, go to lunch. I feel like that would be the biggest difference from being in person. Going to the Conservancy, of course, itself.
Remember going places with people. What a time. This is a very straightforward question from the chat, which is just that, are there work study opportunities through the RRC?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, you can it can be work study non-paid. And then I think there might be some funding for non-work study. That I can't promise that, but for sure work study.
There are also, just to kind of in general, there are a lot of work study opportunities on campus. So if you have work study, you'll be able to fulfill that. And the RRC is an option, but you don't need to be worried about not being able to fulfill your work study your work study package with just the RRC. There are plenty of opportunities. Yeah. Are there any other questions that people want to ask in the Q&A? Because we only have a couple minutes left, but do you guys have anything else that you want to share about the RRC or environmental sustainability at Pitzer in general? I mean, cool if not. Yeah, I do want to say, Thomas, could you talk a little bit more about your major and how it works, because it's kind of a mix of things?
Oh yeah, so I do a dual major in economics and environmental analysis. But in environmental analysis, you can go down different tracks. So there's something called sustainability in the built environment. There's the science track. I don't know what sustainability in the built environment is, so don't ask. But I go down the environmental policy track. So I take classes that essentially blend the two disciplines. I'll take classes at Pomona, to Scripps, to CMC. That are oriented around economics and environmental analysis. So for example, I've taken a class from Pomona called like natural resource economics and policy. And I've taken one around like global international relations and environmental policies. So there are just a ton of different classes that blend the two disciplines. And so following that specific track, I'm able to, combine the two in a way that creates a cohesive major that is economics from the lens of the environment.
Awesome. Thank you for explaining that. And then we have this kind of speculative question we can end on from the chat, which is, as EA majors and folks embracing the importance of environmental sustainability, what is the most ideal outcome of your work? What is your ideal world in regard to environmental sustainability in all its crossroads? You can take a minute to process that if you want. Yeah, does someone want to start with that? Emma, I'm gonna pick on you. Oh no, Mike.
I'll swoop in. I'll swoop in and
go for it.
Help Emma. I think I'd like to say that, rephrasing the question a little bit, I don't think I have like an ideal outcome. I think it's more working towards. And it's also, of course, very important to dream. Very important to imagine what our futures can look like. And so I think instead of an ideal outcome, having this kind of motivation for many outcomes, outcomes that are just, outcomes that are attentive to the needs of our communities, attentive to the needs of the people around us. And I think for me, like, I don't have the most ideal outcome of my work, because I think that's something that's always changing and shifting with the way that the current world is. And I think in regards to like environmental sustainability and its crossroads, right? I think for me specifically, right, what does tangible things like, what does land back look like? What does decolonization look like? What do, like, in relations to my majors, but also what does social justice look like? What does racial justice look like? What do all of these things look like in intersections with environmental sustainability? And how do we understand that these two things exist together, right? Critical disability studies, all of these things, gender. And I think these classes that I've had at Pitzer have allowed me, and Pomona and all these other schools that also take on EA have allowed me to kind of think through this. But I think for me, like in a very general, like worldviewy way, I think just to drive home that I don't have an ideal outcome. I think more, what are the needs in that moment and how do I meet them? But also how do we dream of a broader future, and allowing everyone to be able to take a part of that dream and making that happen. Yeah.
Well, that was an amazing answer. I don't feel like I can follow up on that at all. Malaya pretty much hit the nail on the head, I think. But yeah, it's kind of, as I mentioned before, it's like the big question of our generation is how we're going to handle this process. So I specifically am, hoping as an EA major that I'm specifically looking to do work in that field. The focus of my major is urban environments and social justice. So looking at how environmental justice plays out in an urban setting is really important to me. And that's something that I, hope to do throughout my life to have a positive impact.
Yeah, I think for me, talking on Himalayas, I think it's really hard to imagine what an ideal outcome looks like. But through the courses that we have, like you are able to think of and study solutions that are possible and tangible, and think about creative ways to approach environmental issues. But it's hard to imagine an ideal future where sustainability and environmental sustainability isn't something that's always prevalent. So I think it's really hard to sit down and like think about what an ideal outcome looks like. But I think that through studying environmental sustainability, you kind of get an idea of the avenues that you need to go down and where the solutions actually lie, and just how to approach everything, and where sustainability also fits in. And I think that like leaning on my own experience, like you don't think about sustainable economic decisions, or you don't think about, those environmental sustainability and economic decisions always tying together. But they really do in the end. Like that's the way you have to think about the world, and like in a really more like quantifiable setting. And so I think that for me, it's been learning the reality of it, and understanding what's possible, and still being able to like figure out unique solutions and dreaming big. But yeah.
Those were such wonderful answers to a very thoughtful question. Thank you all so much. And thank you all to all of our attendees who have come. We're going to take a little bit of a break right now. So yeah, once again, thank you to our panelists for that wonderful conversation about Robert Redford Conservancy and environmental sustainability in general. For our attendees, please feel free to come back, take a break right now, and then come back at 5. We have someone who's going to talk a little bit more about the Outback, which is another space on Pitzer's campus that is focused on sustainability and just natural space, and will be a very fun time. And then we're also going to be hearing from A Cleaner Tomorrow, which is another group on campus. It's a little different than the RSC, that also works with communities. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming, and have a good break, and we'll see you back here at 5.
Hi, everybody. My name is Vivian. So I'm going to be talking to you for our next segment here, which is going to be on the Pitzer Outback. So a couple of things that I wanted to start off, just kind of introducing our little topic here. So basically the Outback is a really important place on campus because it is a huge, huge, huge part of our environmental sustainability within the California landscape. Because of that, I want to talk a little bit about kind of our landscape in general, our architecture there, but then also talk about, of course, the Outback itself. So we are located in Southern California. It is warm here. We are not in, a very wet, rainy environment. It is pretty dry out here. And because of that, a lot of our environment is focused around making sure that we are sustainable in terms of water usage. Having completely just like European landscaping isn't necessarily what is considered sustainable. So Pitzer overall makes a lot of effort through our groundskeepers and landscaping to make sure that we have a lot of drought tolerant and drought resistant plants. You see that a lot around our dorms in particular. That is a large part of why they are LEED certified, which is basically a certification for environmental sustainability, is because we are using those drought tolerant and drought resistant plants. The thing about that is, though, that's amazing in terms of water usage, in terms of that aspect of sustainability, but a lot of those plants, unfortunately, aren't native to California. Doesn't make them bad, just as the reality. So in order to then address that other side of sustainability in terms of sustaining California native landscapes, we have the Outback. So basically, the Outback is 3 acres, I believe, 3.4, about that, of completely, exclusively California native plants, and more specifically, native to our particular region of California, because as a person who grew up in NorCal, very, very different kind of landscape, very different in terms of plants and all of that to what you find in Southern California. So what we are is basically, we are in sage scrub land. So a lot of you have probably heard about what sage is. So this is slightly different form from like your typical cooking sage, but it does have white sage and black sage, and they're all part of the same family. They're really very hardy desert plants, which rely on very little water, except for if you've heard of like how succulents are, where it's drought and then drench. They rely on very large downpours of water, and then not much for a time after that. So that is kind of the basis of our landscape. Of course, it is not exclusively sage scrub. Instead, we have a ton of other plants. There's certain types of willows. There's a lot of different forms of trees, flowering plants, and all that sort of thing. But that's also, again, not the only aspect that we have within the Outback. Aside from the plants, we also have, of course, our actual animal visitors. We have a large number of rabbits that live in the outback, as well as we've actually, in recent years, this was very exciting. We had some hawks that were roosting, which was incredibly exciting. And let's see. So that was really a big deal for us, having those hawks out there, because those are actually very unusual for our landscapes. That was amazing. And then we also occasionally have some bats, a variety of different other birds and flying species, as well as a large variety of insects. And finally, the last thing that I think is sometimes neglected in talking about environmental sustainability is the fact that we also have our microbiome, which is also very, very particular to the sage scrub environment. So that is basically all of your bacteria, all of your microbes, all of your, tiny, tiny, tiny species that we have in our soil. So that is also a very, very particular form of sustainability that we have to make sure that those species are doing well as well, because pretty much everything else falls apart if you're not making sure that your soil species are doing well. Let's see. Alrighty. So I do see that we have a question that just popped up talking about the live oaks. Yes, we do absolutely have some amazing oaks. They are magnificent. The squirrels quite like them. But so we have those, like they're giant, they're huge, they're amazing, at the front of the outback, which really welcomes you in, and it's very lovely, as well as also having those particular oak species is incredibly important because a lot of them have been threatened by wildfires, by the building out of suburbs and things like that. So we're also attempting to bring back those species, which is probably the longest project in terms of time span that's going on in the outback. A lot of the plants, it's like put it in the ground. Next season, you have a whole giant new plant. That is the longest one. I actually got to assist in planting some of them a couple years back when I was in a course, which is going to be the next thing I talk about. But yeah, so those are absolutely amazing. Love those. But yeah, so essentially, this is all just me talking about basically ways that you can engage. So I do see we have a question. All right, where's the outback located? That is an amazing question, and I am absolutely going to clarify that, so thank you. So it is actually it is actually at the very, very back of our campus, which makes it very secluded, very nice, quiet, peaceful place. So it's directly behind the behind West, East, and Scandera residence halls. So if you basically, from where I live, I was able to go just right back out there, which was absolutely wonderful. And I see another question. What do the students use the outback for? Funny you ask. So I actually did an extensive project making something like a 53-page report, which analyzed how students use the outback and how students want to use the outback. And this was a part of a project for a class that I had, which was called Restoring Nature. And it is with the amazing Professor Paul Faulstich, who I believe will be on this panel a little bit later. He is fantastic and the leading advocate for keeping the outback and making sure that it is maintained, and as a resource for us on campus. So anyways, basically from that, I got to learn about how students are using it because I set out the survey. Most students I found through that are using it for socializing. Some people go there for a lot of classes. We'll hold like class meetings out there. Other students go there to do homework. Some students said that they would go there to actually paint the plants and things like that. So it's a variety of different uses. There's a lot of benches, places to hang out. That's what I usually would end up doing, is I would go out there with a book and read, or go out with some friends and just hang out there. So a lot of different uses. Also a really nice place to have lunch and dinner. Not enough people do that. Highly recommend that. Let's see. Is it common to see wild animals on campus? I say I only hesitate because the bunnies are more scared of us than, most people are of bunnies. But so we do have a lot of bunnies, which are wild, as well as some ground squirrels. And we also, again, have had those hawks that have been living on our campus recently. They've been living kind of in between the West, East, and Scandera halls that I mentioned, and then primarily in the outback in the Oaks is where they've been residing as of late. So we do have a pair. We've been in the area. So you usually will see them just kind of right before sunset. They start to kind of poke out a little bit and come out. But yeah. All right, let's see. See another question. And so the Outback, again, to clarify, is not just a recreational space. It is also heavily used in classes, not only my class, which again, our main focus was for that class with Professor Paul Faulstich, Restoring Nature. Our main focus was restoring the Outback. So that's what we were doing. We were doing readings based on ecology and discussing those during our class time. But then we additionally were going outside, actually planting in the landscape, helping to maintain the paths, picking up any trash that was there, just kind of like trying to figure things out there. Then we also were making projects. So I myself did that research project to help try and understand how people were using it. And also so future students could get funding for projects by using my research. But another set of students, they made birdhouses. Some students made bat houses. Some students made actually a lending library, which is currently sitting at the front of the Outback for books. So very, very common to use it for classes. Not only that one, but also just other ecology classes, because it's such a wonderful resource to be able to use. And it is also open 24/7. So it is never closed. Like I know some national parks and things, they are, it's closed at sundown. And while this is a preserve that we have on campus, it is officially designated as that. It is open 24/7. There's no gate, there's no fee, there's no anything. You just get to walk in and enjoy it, which is really nice to be able to make that kind of environment accessible to people without having to, first of all, drive somewhere, but also just without having to pay a park fee or a parking fee or what have you. And then with regards to what my favorite thing about the Outback is, I would probably have to say my favorite thing is I actually really enjoyed going out there at night because you end up seeing a lot and hearing more, a lot of the animals that exist out there and a lot of the fauna, which is really special, as well as it's one of the places where you can best see the stars on campus, also the noise of campus, which it's not that loud usually at night, but the little bit of movement that we have starts to fade at night. And it's just very peaceful. And I quite liked going out there to just kind of sit for a little while and ponder about my day. But also just on the day-to-day, there's some really wonderful benches and seating areas that we have throughout that are in shady places under trees, which are great to have lunch. So that would be my alternate. And then with regards to other outdoor spaces that we have, I have two that I can talk about. The first is in regards to another area which we have, which is the Bernard Field Station. So to clarify, yes, the classes that we have that occur in the Outback are often classes that also happen at the Bernard Field Station, which for those of you who don't know, is basically another kind of ecology, environmental biology, environmental analysis location that we have. However, it's not actually on Pitzer's campus. Pitzer does use it, but it's about 15-20 minute walk away off campus across the street, and it is massive. It has all sorts of amazing things. So there's a little bit of a difference. So a lot of the classes that use that are more for like biology courses I know I've had there, but there are also art classes that happen there. So there's really a lot of overlap, I would say, between the Outback and the Bernard Field Station. Then also for another outdoor space we have on campus proper. That's on campus, I would say the Bernard Field Station is, but this is actually on campus, which is our garden. So we also have a garden which is completely student run. You can either work there as a work study position or as just a paid position as a garden manager or a compost manager. Yes, compost manager is actually a job, which I absolutely love. But you can also work there as a volunteer. So the way you do that is you just are a part of garden club. And if you are part of garden club or a paid position, regardless, you are able to decide what plants get planted in the garden, what events you have, and you also get to help take care of our lovely, lovely little chickens. This information is not that important, but their names are Peanut, Big Mama, Little Red Riding Hood, Scarlett Johansson, Raven, and Blanquita. There we go. I knew I was forgetting one. But yeah, so See? And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function so then we can talk about that. But yeah, so that is, again, another resource, that garden that we have, which is actually on campus proper. And it's just a short little walk away from our wonderful, wonderful Outback.
Awesome. Thanks, Vivian. We have a video of the Outback, so we're going to play that for everyone. And I know there's a couple questions coming in the Q&A box, but hopefully this will give everyone a better understanding of what the Outback is and what Vivian's been talking about. And then we can come back with a little short Q&A at the end.
I'm Paul Faulstich, professor of environmental analysis, and I'm teaching this course, Restoring Nature, that's focused on the Pitzer College Outback Preserve. So we're engaging students in learning about the value of restoration, the value of healthy ecosystems, the value of getting people outdoors and getting people to love nature. While there may have been a beginning to this project, I don't necessarily see an end. But our goals are to make this small parcel of coastal sage scrub as ecologically vital and vibrant and diverse as possible, and to incorporate the Outback Preserve into the Pitzer landscape in the sense that it is appreciated and enjoyed and utilized by diverse groups of people, both students and community members, in diverse ways. From bird watching to just quiet time and meditation, to exercise and nature appreciation. We're working in the Outback, we're not only restoring natural communities, but we're restoring human communities as well. And that's just as challenging and just as important. So it's really heartening to see how even the notion, the scientific notion of ecological restoration is changing. And it's changing us while we're changing it. And again, the collaboration just expands. So I see real opportunity and potential for shifting how we do restoration work and what it means to us to be members of a community.
All right, everybody. So that was a video. Again, the speaker was Paul Faulstich. So he was that professor who I was referring to. Absolutely outstanding professor, has taught my favorite classes that I've ever had at Pitzer. So you will, I believe, be attending the panel a little bit later. So please do stick around to hear him speak about environmental sustainability more. He has outstanding things to say, and I've learned so much from him. But in the meantime, we do have some questions that are in the Q&A box. If you have some questions from earlier or anything based on the video that you want to ask me, feel free to put it in there. But I can see that we have one question about light pollution and how clearly you can see the stars. So I will say that, you know, it's not going to be quite the same as if you're in like Yosemite or Joshua Tree, where it's just nothing for miles. So it's not quite that. But from the Outback, I do find that is the best place on campus to be able to see stars, because you are able to go kind of, if you go right to the middle of the Outback, you're pretty isolated from, as much as possible in an urban setting, most of the light pollution, to really be able to see the stars in a wonderful way. So highly recommend doing that if you are interested. And then I see someone else asking, is it a good spot for a relaxing walk after class? Absolutely. I, after pretty much every single midterm, ended up going there and hanging out just for a little while whenever I had a long day, just sitting out there in the quiet to kind of just still my mind and be able to do that is really wonderful, and something that I very much value, aside from its importance in terms of environmental sustainability. So, alrighty, then I see one more question. How often can students access the BFS besides during class? So BFS, again, that's the Bernard Field Station. So basically, you usually do have to get special permissions to be able to access the BFS, but that's pretty easily done. If you have a particular project that you have in mind or something of that sort, you are able to contact the Bernard Field Station and discuss being able to get entry. Reasoning being for why that's required is because it is something that we are trying to protect, environmental sustainability, and specifically sage scrub. It's really scarce. Most of it is being torn down for construction, or just isn't doing well because it's not being taken care of. So therefore, they are protective over that environment, just making sure that you're going there, not just to throw a raucous party, but, you know, to do some research. And then absolutely, they're willing to let you in. So let's see, what got me interested in environmental sustainability? That's a very good question. I would say it was probably back in high school. So my mentor was my freshman year science teacher, and she taught a course which had an obscenely long title, so I'm going to try and remember. It was something along the lines of the science and physics of alternative energy usage. Something like that. And because of her class, I got to actually learn like the science and how certain alternative energy sources worked. And because she saw how passionate I was, when she found out that our high school was attempting to redo our landscaping to be more environmentally sustainable, she recruited me to work on the project as the researcher. So pretty much it's just been kept going from there. That's how I ended up at Pitzer, because I found that really interesting. And then from there, just have kept on going with it through working. I've worked in the Outback. I've volunteered at botanical gardens, which focus on native California plants, the Santa Ana Botanical Garden, if any of you are interested. Just try to keep doing my work out here now that I'm at Pitzer. Alrighty, well, I really appreciate you all asking all of these questions, so thank you very much for that. And I also appreciate you joining us here, so thank you. And I'm happy to be able to talk to you guys about the Outback.
Thank you so much for your time, Vivian, and thank you for sharing your love for the Outback. I know I personally learned a lot. So for the rest of the students that are here, thank you for your time. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break before our next segment. Join us again at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time to hear a presentation from the leaders of a student-run club called A Cleaner Tomorrow. So take a break, grab a snack, get a drink of water, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you again, Vivian. Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed your break. We are now going to hear from Ian and Varun about their involvement with A Cleaner Tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, is it working? Cool. All right, so my name is Ian Reagan. I am a junior at Pitzer from Seattle, Washington originally. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm studying environmental analysis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Varun Baparakar. I'm also a junior, he, him, his pronouns, and I'm from the Bay Area, and I'm currently living with friends in Utah, and I am a data science major.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry. And this is A Cleaner Tomorrow, and ACT for short. So what is ACT and what do we do? ACT is one of the many ways Pitzer students interested in sustainability can get involved on campus outside of kind of their major and normal class schedule. The goal of A Cleaner Tomorrow is to raise environmental awareness and provide environmental education to elementary school students around Claremont. And we teach at schools in traditionally underserved and underfunded school districts who otherwise wouldn't have access to these environmental opportunities. And we mainly do this through classroom education, but we've also hosted and attended community engagement events such as Claremont Earth Day and other events outside of our normal teaching sessions. And we've also collaborated with other Pitzer student organizations to achieve this. And to build club morale and camaraderie, we occasionally go on fun activities just by ourselves to get to know each other better, like beach cleanups, hikes, and dinners at the end of the semester.
Cool. So now we're just going to go over some reasons why Pitzer students join ACT. And I'll start with my personal reason. So I joined ACT pretty much from the beginning of freshman year. So one of my orientation leaders was a senior, and we had a lot of time on OA to just talk about things and get to know each other. And so I remember asking her like what she does outside of class at Pitzer. And she said that she's part of this environmental education group called ACT. And that because I was looking to major in environmental analysis, it might be something that I was interested in doing. So once the trip ended and we got back to campus and the semester started, I started attending some of their meetings. I really liked what we were doing and talking about. And so I decided to stay, and here I am.
Yeah, and for me, I really wanted to get involved with one of the sustainability initiatives at Pitzer outside of campus. And I had experience teaching elementary school kids in high school, and I really kind of wanted to continue that. So I thought ACT was kind of a great way to do that.
Yeah, so ACT is a great way for students to embody some of Pitzer's core values, such as student engagement and environmental sustainability. So if you're looking to get involved with community engagement, volunteering, and just helping benefit your local community in any way, Pitzer is a great place to do that. Also, many of the student organizations at Pitzer are geared towards that, and ACT is just one example of that. It's also a great way to kind of channel your passion for the environment or for teaching. So personally, I found it really helpful to try to distill some of the big environmental concepts that I learned in my classes at Pitzer to a 5th grade level. And I know it sounds weird, but it actually helps me cement those ideas in my head. Also, a lot of people are interested in becoming teachers after they graduate. And so this is a great way to kind of get some experience with teaching. But also, again, you don't have to be an EA major or interested in being a teacher to join ACT. You can just join if any of this stuff is interesting to you. So yeah, and we welcome anyone who wants to join. Also, I kind of think of ACT kind of as a quasi EA network sometimes. And it really helps you build community at Pitzer. So for example, there were a lot of seniors in the club when I was a freshman, and even though they've graduated and they've gone on to work in the environmental field, I still maintain some of those relationships. So oftentimes they've helped me, if I have questions about majoring in EA at Pitzer, or just general career advice, or just want to talk to someone older, then I still get into contact with them. And one of them actually, right before the pandemic, came back to Pitzer because he was a fellow for Bon Appetit Cafe, which is a company that runs the Pitzer dining hall. And so he was going to all of the dining halls that they run in the West Coast and just assessing them, and said, hey, can I come to an ACT meeting like old times? So he came, and it was great to see him again and just continue building those relationships.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And this is kind of an example of a lesson which we teach. And if you look in the bottom left, we actually taught this lesson on March 2nd of 2020, which is about a week before things went south. So this was kind of our last lesson. Unfortunately, we couldn't teach this year because the schools just had too many issues with virtual learning. So we had to pause this year, but we're really excited to start next year. So yeah, this is a lesson which we teach to the kids, and this is about agriculture. So we'd start by making a lesson plan document on the left, outlining each activity, how much time we spend on it, whether it's an entire group activity, a smaller group, or it's done individually. And we also have the description of each activity for the teachers. And we also include notes and tips, and we often use PowerPoints, videos, and other methods for these lessons. So in the middle, you can see kind of an activity sheet. We create engaging activities that make students apply what they've learned to their lives. And in this sheet, it's called Trace Your Taco. Students compare their estimate with the true distance between where their food is grown and the distance between where the food is grown and how far it is away from their plates to kind of better visualize the carbon footprint of their food. And also on the right, we give them worksheets, which they can fill out during their time so they can kind of cement the information in their minds and can better recall it when we come back. We actually only started these worksheets last year, but immediately found a major improvement in their engagement and comprehension of the material. And they also enjoy getting a chance to jot down their thoughts and interpretations. So we'll definitely be continuing that. And in other lessons, we've also had them use art or other creative outlets to kind of apply the materials they learned.
Yeah, and some of my favorite days are the last day of the semester where we do a big Jeopardy on like some of the topics that we discussed throughout the whole semester. So that's always fun. Yeah, so Pitzer has a very strong tradition of student engagement, and we highly encourage you to explore the various clubs and organizations at Pitzer and throughout the 5 Cs as well. Personally, for me and Varun, our involvement in various clubs has deeply enriched our college experience, and we hope that you all take advantage of these opportunities as well. So yeah, thank you for listening to us, and if you have any questions, please ask away. And I can stop screen sharing. Okay.
What does involvement with communities outside of Pitzer look like? How many schools do you engage with? Ian, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to take it?
Sorry, I can't find the chat real quick. Can you take this one? Sorry.
You're good. Yeah, so our club ACT has traditionally been a Pitzer only club, but we actually had many Scripsies and Pomona students last year. And there's also many clubs which are 5C clubs. And at the beginning of the year, there's a club fair, which is super fun, which you can kind of go to learn about all the clubs.
I can take this next one. What have been some of your favorite lessons / topics you've gotten to focus on? Personally, there's so many things. I think my favorite one was also from last semester. We were talking about like Southern California ecology, and we have talked about ecology basically every year. So we kind of like do a similar lesson. But this time we incorporated a lot of stuff about fire ecology and why fire is actually beneficial for a lot of like the grasslands here, and how a lot of plants actually require fire to germinate. We actually did this because a lot of the people on the like lesson planning committee like took a class where we talked about like fire. So it's really cool to like implement things that we learned like even a few weeks before into like our material. So I think that's probably my favorite one.
I think for me, I have to second Ian on that, just teaching about fires and natural disasters. And that's because, as you guys all probably know, California has had big issues with those in the past few years. And we've also seen hurricanes and fires in Australia. So I think it really gives the students a chance to kind of learn the backstory behind what's really going on with these distressing natural disasters. And I think they really appreciate learning about that.
Yeah, and the next question says, how does a Pitzer education inform / support your involvement in ACT? So again, Pitzer is like a very good place for student engagement. So there's a very strong tradition and support from the institution for that. So for example, each club gets a certain amount of funding. So for example, we need to be reimbursed for gas when we drive to the elementary school, or for some of the materials that we use, or to go to the our beach cleanups and stuff. So they're really helpful with funding as well, so that we can do some of these things, so that it like doesn't have to come out of our pocket, because otherwise it just like wouldn't really be possible. So that's one way. And then Varun, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that was a great answer. We have a lot of questions, so I should probably take the next one. Why is environmental sustainability important to you? Well, because it's kind of looming, well, it's actually already in motion, climate change and global warming. We can already kind of see the effects of it. And I think it's important, not just to me, but to kind of communicate that to everyone else, so they understand the gravity of it. And I think what's so special about ACT is the students we teach wouldn't even hear about this from their normal school, because as we mentioned, we kind of teach an underfunded school, so they might not have access to these opportunities. So it's super important for me personally to kind of make sure that this generation understands the gravity of what we're dealing with. And I think that's why ACT is so cool.
Okay, the next question says, do students from other 5Cs participate in ACT as well? Generally, they don't. I've only had, I think only 1 or 2 in my entire time have participated. And that's because year before last, most of the club was seniors and everyone graduated. So it was actually just me and Varun as the people who like carried it over. So we needed a bit of help to like get it on our, get back on our feet kind of. So I just texted one of my friends from Scripps who is majoring in EA and also interested in becoming a teacher, and was like, this would be perfect for you. And so she helped out, and that was great. But generally, we generally try to stay with Pitzer. So yeah.
What other groups does ACT interact with on campus? In the past, we haven't really. We've kind of only been our own club. But since I mentioned last semester, we kind of couldn't teach because of the issues with virtual learning, we actually did a crossover with a club called Tutors for a Cause, which some of you may have heard of, which does general tutoring to kind of the dining hall employees' kids. And we did a kind of a crossover with them where we kind of had an environmental lesson. And we were able to do that because of the virtual learning, and that club still is going strong in this year of Zoom. So we kind of decided to do a little lesson for them. But normally we don't really have involvement with other clubs, but I think that's something which we can definitely see if we can explore next year.
Yeah, and also this isn't a Pitzer club, but in the past, Pitzer students often help out with the City of Claremont's Earth Day fair / events. And that's just like great little like internship that people can do. And then they often like connect with clubs at the 5Cs. So we've hosted Earth Day events. And I know that's not a Pitzer club, but it's still like an outdoor like involvement with an outside group. So that's also something that we've enjoyed. So another question is, what other environmental clubs / activities are there to participate in on campus and throughout the consortium? So there's a lot of other groups at Pitzer that I know of. I know of one, I'm forgetting what it's called. I know it starts with an R, but it's like a nationwide group, I believe, that helps with like community-based solar. So like if buildings or like little neighborhoods want to like use more solar panels, they can like go to this group and ask them for help. So that's a really cool group. I think it might be called Revolve. I could be wrong. I'll have to get back to you on that. And then also Sunrise is a huge one, which is throughout the entire 5Cs. I'm also kind of a part of that. And so if anyone's interested in climate advocacy, learning about the Green New Deal, and supporting like responsible and progressive climate policy, Sunrise is like a great place to go.
Yep. What is your favorite part about working with kids, and what is something that you have learned from them? Yeah, so I think my favorite part about working with kids is their curiosity. They, as I said, obviously have never learned about this before, but when they do, their eyes kind of light up. They, even though they may not understand it fully, they still think it's like super cool. Especially like I talked about the fire lesson we did. They see these things in the news, and then they kind of get to learn the backstory, and they just ask really great questions. Like one memorable lesson we had, we were talking about childhood climate advocacy, and one of the kids just blurted out, "Can we talk about Greta?" And then we just went off on a whole tangent where we just talked about what Greta's doing. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah, the next question is, do you think you're able to do more concrete action because you're at Pitzer? Yeah, I know we've touched on this a lot, but like just because of how engaged a lot of people at Pitzer are, like I feel like we're all kind of holding each other accountable and like motivating each other to, you know, be active in the community. So that push from other people is really helpful, and also it just makes it more fun and rewarding. So like, as I mentioned, like we're not just like doing this to help kids in the area, but also like getting to meet other people. And a lot of my friends come from various clubs that I've done, whether it's, you know, ACT or like the club soccer team, which is a 5C based club. So like you can also like really like bolster your like social network, I guess, by doing some clubs. So yeah.
Why do you think it's important for children to learn about sustainability? Well, because the way that they deal with this is kind of going to tell how we kind of respond to climate change. Obviously, our generation and the generation above us is not doing such a good job. So the more they kind of understand, the more they can fight back.
Okay, the next one is, what are some of your favorite nature spaces in your Pitzer? So this is funny. So I'm from Seattle, and honestly, before I went to Pitzer, I thought Southern California was just like a desert and there was nothing there, but that cannot be further from the truth. In fact, Southern California is one of the 20 most biodiverse regions in the world. It's one of the biodiversity hotspots, which I had no idea about. And there's so many beautiful like natural areas. Personally, I think Mount Baldy is my favorite just because it's right there. And whenever it rains in Claremont, it snows in Mount Baldy, and the view is just amazing. Also, hiking it is very fun, but bring a lot of water and snacks because it's like a 4-hour hike. So yeah, Mount Baldy is probably my favorite one, but also Joshua Tree is nearby and the beach is nearby too.
I'd have to say Catalina for me. My OA was Catalina, and I really wanted to go back there last year, but I couldn't because we went virtual, so I'm excited to do that next year. Ian, I think you should take this next one, but I'll take the one after that.
Okay, are you thinking about a career in ES after Pitzer? I'm assuming you mean environmental science by that question. So personally, I'm not looking to do science. My track within EA is policy. Although you do take a few environmental science classes if you're majoring in EA. But personally, I think there's a lot of amazing science going on out there, and the issue with like adapting to progressive and responsible climate policy is not like a fault or a gap in science, and it's just we're lacking the political will and like ability to do so. So that's where I want to go. And specifically, I want to do like energy policy. But you know, if you're doing environmental policy, you basically depend on environmental science to inform those decisions. So even though I'm not directly in environmental science, there's like still a lot of crossover. So that's something that I really enjoy.
Do you have to have a strong interest in education or being a teacher in order to participate in NACT? And the answer is absolutely not. Like I said, you don't need to be an EA major. I'm not an EA major, but I still am having a blast in NACT, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm participating. Something cool also is our club is structured in a way that you can either be a teacher or you can help kind of plan the lessons we teach. So if you don't really want to teach, you can definitely do that. So yes, no, you absolutely do not have to have an interest in being a teacher or even be an environmental major to participate in ACT.
Yeah, a lot of our members are neither, but they just want to, you know, help us out and do something fun. So the next question, have you both been able to pursue some internships relevant to sustainability throughout your time at Pitzer? So I actually haven't done yet. I haven't yet done a environmental internship because over the past summers, I've been working on like political campaigns. So this summer, I'm going to try to do something with sustainable agriculture or like urban planning, basically back in Seattle. But I haven't yet done a environmental internship, but it's definitely, ACT is definitely helpful for like helping me decide like what I want to do in that regard.
If you were billionaires, what will be one lasting environmental action you would make? Interesting. Well, Bill Gates just released a book about this if you're interested. I didn't get a chance to read it, but I heard really great things about it. So maybe check that one out. If I were a billionaire, though, I'd say I'd probably invest in more solar and nuclear power. And I'd also probably invest in meat and more vegan meat and how to make how to make impossible meat taste a little bit better.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had impossible meat a few times, and it seems like every year it gets better. Also, about the OA trip to Catalina, I also did Catalina, and that was a really fun one. So I bumped that. Definitely sign up for Catalina. It's great. Also, okay, the next question for EA, did you have any problems getting into classes at other schools? So generally, no. But also the older you get, the seniority you get in terms of when you get to sign up. So generally the issue with getting into classes is your grade. And also sometimes classes will say Pomona only or CMC only. But honestly, as long as you email the professor and send what's called a perm request, which is something you'll learn later, and just follow up, then you have a really good chance of getting the class. My sophomore fall, 3 of the 4 classes I ended up taking, I did not get into immediately. And I permed, emailed the professors, went to their office hours, and they eventually just let me in. So definitely do that.
Okay, I think this next question is for you, Ian. How do you feel the policy track has prepared you for your future career in environmental policy, and what are some of your favorite classes?
Oh my God, every class is my favorite class. Gosh, so I would say my favorite class so far has been domestic environmental policy with Professor Teresa Spezio, because it gives you a really good overview of environmental policy in this country, and also some of the fundamental governmental aspects of that, and how land policy and oil and gas and forestry policies still have such a huge impact. So that was a really great class. Also, regarding how that track has prepared me for a future in environmental policy, it kind of says it with the name. You learn just a lot about environmental policy, whether it's renewable energy or water policy. There's a lot of really good classes about water policy. So you really learn the political backgrounds and the practical solutions for a lot of our environmental problems that we're facing today in some of these classes. And then you can apply that to a potential internship or job. So yeah.
What is one thing that you want club members to take away from ACT? Probably not anything specific. I guess just enjoy the process and enjoy the kind of action of teaching kids. I mean, it's a really rewarding thing when you kind of see somebody kind of understand these very complicated concepts, which I'm sure, as Ian can attest to, are even complicated for college students. And honestly, we're working with young children, so the environment is a very stress-free environment. So we have a blast doing it. So that as well. Any last words, advice about your experience with ACT and Pitzer? Ian?
Yeah, I would say, even if you don't join ACT, which is totally fine, I won't take it personally. Definitely explore all of the clubs that are available to you, and they don't even have to be something that's quote unquote academic, like you could see ACT as being. There's chess club, there's soap carving club. Before the pandemic, I did the 5C soccer club, which was super fun. And clubs are just such a great outlet for spending time and being productive that's outside of doing your homework, which can sometimes get you down. So it's just a really great way to channel that energy into something that's fun and positive. So my advice to everyone is to just explore those opportunities, because after college, it's harder to recreate that.
Yeah, I'd have to second what Ian said. And as we so brutally learned, college can be taken away from you just with the snap of a finger. So if there's something which you get invited to or something which you find cool, don't hesitate to follow it.
Yeah, also before we wrap up, I guess I'll just like I can put my email in the chat, so, and maybe Varun too if you want. So if people have any questions about like EA or ACT or Pitzer or whatever, they can just ask me or Varun, if that's all right.
Thank you both so much for your time and for sharing with us your work in A Cleaner Tomorrow. I'm sure your time here convinced many of our admitted students and even myself to join next year. We are going to take a 5-minute break, and next up, we are going to be joined by an environmental analysis professor, Paul Faulstich, and it's going to be a chat moderated with our student, Emma Barker. So thank you again so much for your time. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Also take a class with Paul Faulstich. He's a great guy. I'm in one now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Emma Barker, and I am a Pitzer student, a senior, and an environmental analysis major. And I'm going to be moderating right now a conversation with the amazing professor, Paul Faulstich, who's been at Pitzer for a very long time, about the EA major, some of the course offerings, and what it's like as an experience teaching at Pitzer. So Paul, do you want to start by just introducing yourself a little bit about your background, how long you've been at Pitzer, and some of the courses you usually teach?
Happy to do so. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for doing this, everybody. Appreciate it. And hello to everyone who is out there joining us. So I am Paul Faulstich, and I have been teaching at Pitzer a long time. I've been here about 30 years now teaching. However, I go back even further because I graduated from Pitzer College in 1979 with a double major in environmental studies. We now call it environmental analysis, but back then it was called environmental studies, and art. And I'm also happy to say that my daughter graduated from Pitzer as well with a self-designed major in creative practice for community and the environment. So Emma asked me what courses I teach. I'll tell you what I'm currently teaching this semester. On Mondays, I teach a class called Progress and Oppression. This is a course that has to do with the intersection of human rights abuses and environmental degradation, and looking at the overlaps and the common causes between the two. On Wednesdays, I teach a class called Ethnoecology, which is looking at different understandings of nature, different cultural understandings of nature, largely with a focus on indigenous peoples and local peoples, and trying to get a better handle on their traditional ecological knowledge and practice of environmental management and stuff like that. And then on Thursdays, I teach a class called Visual Ecology, which is a combined art studio class and environmental studies or environmental analysis class, which is asking students to look at environmental issues through a creative graphic lens and to be able to communicate critical environmental issues visually. So that's what I'm doing currently. I teach a number of other courses, obviously, too. One of my favorites is called Theory and Practice in Environmental Education. And this is a class that oversees the LEAP partnership. LEAP stands for the Leadership in Environmental Education Partnership. And in this class, we train college students, you guys, soon to be you, to develop a place-based outdoor environmental education curriculum, and then to teach this to elementary school children from the Claremont Unified School District. So it's Pitzer's longest standing community partnership. And we do this teaching at the Robert Redford Conservancy for Southern California Sustainability, and the Bernard Biological Field Station. So it's outdoors, hands-on kind of science education. So in a nutshell, Emma and all, that's what I do.
Great, thank you so much for that. And it sounds like you've got a very busy semester going as well with all of those courses.
Yeah, well, I love busy semesters. So.
And you mentioned LEAP and the environmental education opportunity. I wanted to hope that you could elaborate a little bit more on what it's like to be within Pitzer and environmental analysis, focusing on opportunities for community engagement and being involved outside of the classroom as well.
Yeah, well, environmental analysis at the field group, the department at Pitzer, has a real focus on hands-on pedagogy. So a lot of our classes are community engagement, or another class I teach, it's called Restoring Nature. And in that class, students are engaged with doing environmental restoration efforts on Pitzer's campus. We work in the Pitzer Outback Preserve, and we're trying to restore, it's a small 3.5 acre parcel of coastal sage scrubland that isn't in the best of shape, and we're trying to bring back some of its ecological vitality. So, so that's another example of our hands-on classes. But as Emma and others can tell you, of course, a lot of what we do is hands-on, but we really want to create practical experiences for our students. One of the things that is required of students graduating in environmental analysis is an internship component. So you're, again, out there in the real world, learning real world skills and doing hands-on stuff. Did I get to what you were asking me, Emma? You might have to.
Yeah, that was perfect. No, that was a great example. And yeah, as an environmental analysis student, one of the opportunities that I had in terms of that was doing the Ontario program, which is now called CASA Pitzer, which is a immersive program taking courses about community social change movements and doing research methods, and also doing an internship in the city of Ontario. And that covers a number of disciplines, but mine was at a local community garden called Huerta del Valle, which has a long-standing relationship with Pitzer. And so I was able to mix the environmental analysis and then the praxis as we talk about it, in engaging in the community in that way simultaneously. Yeah. So there's a lot of amazing opportunities to do that as an EA major as well.
Another opportunity I should mention also is our Firestone Center for Restoration Ecology in Costa Rica. And this is a program that is housed in environmental analysis through our study abroad program. And students that go there do homestays, so they're living with Costa Rican families while they're studying Spanish, but they're also engaged in hands-on work at our basically our farm. Well, it had been a ranch, a cattle ranch that we are now restoring. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and has a lot of biodiversity within it. We have some trail cameras set up there, and we've caught cougars and other wonderful wildlife on site. So that's another great opportunity for hands-on stuff. And there's a lot of opportunities through the Redford Conservancy as well.
For sure. And kind of building off of that, I feel like we've covered a couple of them. We've kind of been talking about student engagement in all the community engagement opportunities they are, intercultural understanding, and the opportunities to go abroad. And I was hoping you'd just talk a little bit more about how you feel like the environmental analysis discipline interconnects with all of the other core values of Pitzer as well: social responsibility, interdisciplinary learning, and student engagement as well.
You know, it's hard. Like, how can you not talk about all those when you're talking about environmental analysis? Those are central to the core of what we do. Environmental analysis is inherently interdisciplinary at Pitzer. We have 4 different tracks. So a student majors in environmental analysis, but within that, a student chooses to either kind of have their focus, their specialty in environment and society, environmental policy, sustainability and the built environment, or environmental science. And students are required or expected to do classes in all of those dimensions as well. And all of our faculty come from different backgrounds and training. As I told you before, I have a degree in art, in studio art, as well as environmental studies. And my PhD is in anthropology. So I'm trained as a cultural anthropologist, and I do work in human ecology. I'm interested in the ecological dimensions of human ideologies, how people think and what we think about the world around us and how we make sense of the world. And I kind of specialize in what I call the ecology of expressive culture, how things like art and myth and ritual mediate between ourselves and the more than human world. And all of our colleagues, all of the professors in environmental analysis also are coming from a different disciplinary perspective. So students are inherently exposed to that. Many of our classes are cross-listed with other disciplines, and we cross-list many of their classes as well. Environmental analysis isn't so much a discipline, I would say, as it is a collaboration. It's a collaboration of different disciplines coming together to look at this thing we call the environment. And that includes both the natural environment and the human environment. Environmental analysis at Pitzer also is unique, not only on our focus kind of on human ecology, but also on environmental justice. We have a very strong emphasis on looking at equity issues when it comes to environmental concerns. And usually there's an overlap between environmental injustices and human rights injustices, but sometimes the two are in conflict. And then how do you go about resolving those conflicts? So we're really, the Pitzer's core values are core and central across the board to environmental analysis. Of course, sustainability is one of Pitzer's core values as well. And environmental analysis at the college, I like to think, and I honestly believe, we serve as kind of a watchdog for the institution and make sure that we're doing okay, that we walk the talk, as it were, and that we live our values accordingly.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you for all of that. I'm seeing some questions pop up, and I want to echo what Olivia said in the chat, which is please use the Q&A function to type in any questions that you guys may have, and we can talk about it with Paul as we go. I'm seeing one came up that you just started to talk about a little bit, so I thought we could go into a little more detail, asking what type of research / subjects and topics do you regularly engage in, and what work are you doing in these different aspects of study?
Okay. Emma, do you want me to be reading, keeping up with the Q&A myself?
No, don't worry about it. You can look if you'd like to, but I'll keep tabs on it.
So I'm interpreting that question as asking me about my own research. Is that right? Well, my research is primarily engaged with Indigenous Australia, Aboriginal Australia. And to tell this story a little bit, I have to go back to my days as a student at Pitzer. Because I was studying, as you know, environmental studies and art. And I heard of this fellowship opportunity called the Watson Fellowship, which still exists for current students. And the Watson Fellowship is only available to students at select liberal arts colleges. I think there are maybe like 60 colleges that participate or are invited to participate, and Pitzer is one of them. And it allows for a year of independent study and travel and independent research. And I had never been abroad before that. And I thought, well, what a cool opportunity to go explore a passion of mine. And I had learned about Indigenous Australian art in a couple of my classes and its connection to the landscape. And I thought, wow, what a dream that would be if I could go to Australia travel the continent and immerse myself in the cultures and the art. So I applied for this Watson Fellowship and I was granted it. And that kind of that certainly shifted my gears tremendously in all sorts of ways, including that it began this lifelong research interest in Indigenous Australian issues. So I've been working in Aboriginal Australia, particularly a culture called the Warlpiri, W-A-R-L-P-I-R-I, Warlpiri people who live in the Central Desert in Australia, and a little community called Nyirpi, which is about an 8-hour drive over rough dirt road from the town of Alice Springs, right in the center of the continent. And I've been working there, like I say, for 35 or more years. Well, I first went there in 1981 on my Watson Fellowship. So that shows you how long I've been working there. But my research interests are really broad too. So I do work in the American Southwest with Native American peoples. Before coming to teach at Pitzer, I had a couple of museum jobs. I was curator of anthropology at the Southwest Museum here in Los Angeles. And I was immediately before coming to Pitzer, I was curator of Native American art at the Portland Art Museum in Portland, Oregon. So I have all that interest in those connections with Native American artists and Native American communities. And most recently, I've been combining environmental ecological research with my own art practice. And currently I'm in an exhibit at the Claremont Museum of Art. You ought to look up the Claremont Museum of Art online. It's a wonderful resource. And you can look at this exhibit, which is called, I forget what it's called, but it's about work that artists have produced during the pandemic, and I have a piece in that. But the work that I'm currently doing, I've used trail cameras in the Claremont Hills Wilderness Park to document wildlife, and I'm trying to record animal demographics and get a better understanding of population dynamics of different animals in the Claremont foothills, and to find out how healthy the populations are and stuff like that. And then I'm using these images in various ways in my own art practice. So I could ramble on for a long time about these things, but I suspect that there are other questions, and I'll leave it there for now.
Perfect, thank you. And I think that was a really great example too of the opportunities, the work that you're doing very locally here in Claremont in Southern California, but also the opportunities to get engaged internationally, and the Watson Fellowship. It's so interesting that you did that so long ago, and now, you know, Pitzer is still a top producer of Fulbright Fellows and has Watson students as well. So that's still very much a part and an opportunity that a lot of students choose to take advantage of now as well.
I have had 3 Fulbright Fellowships, all of them for Australia. Most recently, I was a senior scholar is the category of the award, and I was a visiting professor at the Australian National University in Canberra during one of my sabbatical times. So yeah, the Fulbright and the Watson opportunities exist for both students and professors as well.
Absolutely. And then switching gears a little bit, we've got a question from Nikita here. They've heard a lot about the amazing work done for environmental policy tied to the EA major, but was wondering about the STEM side of the major and if doing scientific research is equally emphasized or less so. Specifically, they would be interested in the prevalence of environmental biology in the major.
Great. Yeah, well, like I said early on, we have 4 tracks in the major, and environmental science is one of those tracks. So students who are interested in science would be doing a lot of their coursework at our Keck Science Center, which is the science facility that is shared between Pitzer and Scripps and currently CMC, Claremont McKenna College. Wonderful facilities. We're actually expanding those facilities. Things have been kind of on hold during the pandemic, but we're going to be building a new science building while you guys are on campus, probably commencing next year. I don't really know what the timeline is for that. But professors in Keck Science are often engaging. I mean, they're kind of at the forefront of engaging students in their field research. Well, not just field work, research, but lab research too. So in their research, and they're publishing stuff with students, publishing research and stuff like that. So there are tremendous opportunities for STEM people interested in the sciences. Like I say, that work is through environmental analysis, but your focus within that would be within the sciences. Again, fully engaged in all of the opportunities and resources at Pitzer and beyond for EA, what we call EA, environmental analysis, but also then taking advantage of all of the great stuff that happens at our Keck Science Center.
Absolutely, and building off of that outside of STEM, because we've got some questions more generally, we have a question about the research and internship opportunities for students, and are there any partnerships with local organizations or companies?
Yeah, and let me just say, I would invite anyone, all of the rest of you, Emma and Olivia and Kayla and Erin, to chime in also when you have stuff to add, because I know that I'm going to be overlooking stuff and forgetting things. So please augment what I have to say with your experiences as well. So Emma, the question again is
about research and internship opportunities for students. I'm imagining an EA, but we could talk about it more generally. And if there are any partnerships with local organizations or companies.
Yeah, well, a lot of opportunities, like Emma talked about her internship through, did you work at Amy's Farm? Where did you work, Emma?
I worked at Huerta del Valle.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Through the Ontario program. We have lots and lots of connections throughout the area in the Inland Empire with nonprofit organizations and professional corporations, people doing the on-the-ground work. And our Community Engagement Center is really good at connecting students, networking through those linkages. Our Redford Conservancy for Southern California's sustainability is developing all sorts of wonderful networks of opportunities and connections. We've had students working recently with our local Native American partners, the indigenous peoples native to the Claremont region are called Tongva, Tongva. And we've had really rich and long-standing relationships with Tongva people. But we also place students broadly throughout the country, or when students are on summer break and stuff like that, students will identify internships for themselves through, it could be a law firm, it could be a nonprofit organization, an NGO or something like that. And there's support both among the faculty and within student affairs for making that some of that stuff happen. I know there's, and students might have more to say about this, but there's a fund that students can apply for that provide for some assistance if they have a unpaid internship that gives them some living funds and stuff. Is that right, Emma?
Yes, that's absolutely right. We have the Career Services at Pitzer offers an internship fund, which is exactly as Paul said, the opportunity to basically get funding if you get an unpaid internship to do whatever you want over that summer, which is a great opportunity. Also, Career Services is there to really help you out at any time, to get involved, to get summer opportunities or to, when I'm graduating. So I've been in contact with Brad Tharp, who's the Director of Career Services over there, and he's super helpful as well, which is great. But yes, there are totally opportunities. As Paul mentioned, I did the internship at Huerta del Valle. Right now, I am doing my senior thesis, a project on building electrification policy in the city of Riverside. And that was partly possible because of the relationship that has been cultivated between the Robert Redford Conservancy and the city of Riverside and local government there. And so there's definitely opportunities to be doing research, whether that's in the STEM fields or outside of it, and to be getting involved as well, 100%. And building off that, we were talking a little bit about more broadly, Hannah here asked, do you or your students get involved in environmental policy at the national level?
Yes, definitely. We have some students that have worked at the Capitol, for example, as interns and stuff like that. And that's really kind of I don't do environmental policy, so that's less my expertise. I feel a little wanting or lacking in being able to answer that question sufficiently. My colleagues Brenda Sarathy and Melinda Harold Menzies are our two sort of policy wonks that would be able to entertain that better. But yes, I would say that most of those opportunities would be kind of student initiated ones. So we hope for a lot of initiative coming from our students. And that doesn't mean that we just sit back and don't want to do anything, but our students tend to be very motivated and go-getters and are really keen on finding these opportunities for themselves. And that often happens, and we're supportive of that. But you'll also find that colleagues, or I call them colleagues, my colleagues, but professors across the table at Pitzer are so well connected, like nationally, to all sorts of organizations or even national politics, that once you kind of find out about those people, and if you're interested in going out and reaching out and introducing yourself to that professor of political studies or whatever, and or taking a class from them and getting to know them that way, then that's how you make things happen. That's how opportunities develop. So it's not necessarily that everything's going to be lined up for you. But if you're interested in national level politics, there'll be a lot of sort of assistance, enthusiasm, and help on how to make that happen.
Absolutely. And an example of something that does happen on the Claremont College's campus, and I think is pretty recent to last year, is there's a local chapter of the Sunrise Movement that is now a Pitzer 5 college organization that you can join and get involved. And they, are promoting the Green New Deal on a national level and also a local level. So that's a great example of that too.
Do you think our participants know about the Sunrise Movement? Might you explain it a little bit more, Emma?
Yeah, the Sunrise. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting some sirens here, so don't mind me.
Where are you?
I'm in Montclair, actually. I'm just nearby Claremont, living off campus. But lots of siren action right now. But so the Sunrise Movement is a national organization that was kind of created specifically to promote the Green New Deal. Oh yes, we're getting a link actually, so that's perfect. So you guys can look more into that. But it's a great opportunity that the 5Cs have engaged in by creating this club that any students at the consortium can join, which is really cool as well. And they've definitely co-sponsored some events with the Conservancy as well on campus, which is really cool.
It's become, I think, one of the 5C kind of premier student organizations, student clubs, really engaged, really doing wonderful stuff. A lot of passionate students working within it.
For sure. And I was thinking, just in terms of thinking about making major changes in student advocacy and things like that, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about, because I'm imagining you were at Pitzer at this time, the decision to divest from fossil fuels. I wasn't on campus at this time, so I would just love to hear a little bit about how that came about and how that involved students and faculty and EA as a discipline.
Well, let me tell you, Pitzer divesting from fossil fuels would not have happened were it not for the initiative of students. That was really from the ground up. Students got passionate about that. Students led the movement, and they were so organized and so good at bringing in different constituencies and voices. They got me involved, and I showed up for rallies and protests and board of trustee meetings and stuff like that. We invited them to faculty meetings and college council meetings to argue their case. We set up a committee with students, a divestment committee with students and faculty and board members and staff to basically investigate our options for divestment. And then that committee came back to the rest and said, hey, we can do this. Not only do we think we should do it because of our values, but we also think that we can do it and do it in a fiscally responsible way. And Don Gould, who is one of our Board of Trustee members, is also a financial whiz. And he took the helm with this and still is at the helm with it. And I think is doing a tremendous job. But again, that was the students were phenomenally organized and articulate and brilliant with arguing their point and doing it in such a diplomatic, effective way. It's like, that's better than any class I could teach. Just watch how these students are organizing themselves. And in fact, at least one of those students has gone on and is doing this divestment stuff professionally. So did I get at that?
Yes, that was perfect. I was honestly just as curious because that was before my time at Pitzer, but it's still a really cool part of learning about Pitzer and connection to environmental sustainability and being a leader on that front. But kind of building off of that, I was wondering if you'd talk about what's unique about teaching environmental analysis at Pitzer versus any other school. And I would also love to hear a little bit about the fact that the environmental analysis or environmental studies major has been a part of Pitzer for so long versus, a lot of schools in the last 5 or 10 years have decided to adopt this kind of major. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, our environmental studies program began in the early 1970s and was one of the first in the country. And so we've been identifying the need for really deep analysis, deep understanding, deep investigation of environmental issues for many decades before it was at kind of the forefront, or before it became kind of fashionable within, and thank goodness it is, but within academia. It needs to be front and center, of course. But one thing that has always kind of set Pitzer apart is in our environmental analysis program is our focus on human ecology. I mean, again, we do it all. We do the STEM stuff and we do the policy stuff. We do the design, architecture, green building stuff, but the sort of human component, since Pitzer sort of began as a school focused on the social sciences, that has always kind of set us apart from other places, and hence our kind of critical interest in issues of environmental justice and environmental racism and those sorts of things that are central to our program. One of the things to address the other aspect of your question, Emma, one of the things that I relish about teaching at Pitzer is that Pitzer, unlike just about any other place that a professor could end up teaching, Pitzer is permissive in that Pitzer says, you do what you guys design. So Pitzer is faculty governed, is a faculty governed college institution. So we're, faculty are at the helm of most of the kind of important policy decisions of the college. And one thing, an element of that kind of focus on faculty, focus on students as well, but focus on faculty is that we're allowed to teach what we want to teach. Teach within our passion rather than just being expected to teach core courses. And we do that too. We have Intro to Environmental Analysis, which is a critical course for us to teach. We have our critical environmental analysis seminar for graduating seniors, another course that we expect our professors to be able to teach. But within that, we also are able to teach classes that we just love, that are from our hearts, and let us kind of develop our interests that way. And that's really a luxury. That's what, I get to teach a class called The Desert as a Place, focusing on kind of interdisciplinary aspects of arid environments. That's a real luxury for me. But more than that, and this is genuine, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. It's our students. It's being able to engage these students that are unique, that are brilliant, that are passionate, that are questioning, that aren't just going to sit there complacently and listen, but want to engage in intellectual discussion and debate and dialogue, and want to challenge me, and want to challenge each other. And I don't mean challenge in a kind of weird negative sort of way. I mean in a genuine dialogic way. And to me, that's the greatest gift. I continually marvel at our students, and teaching at Pitzer is unique because we have unique students. I was talking to a colleague over the weekend or late last week, and I was saying to her how lucky I feel to be teaching these students, and how they are fabulous, and that they're just engaging these topics in such a deep, meaningful way. It's like and I don't mean to intimidate anybody out there if you're wondering if you should come to Pitzer, but they're engaging the material at graduate level work. And it kind of dumbfounds me. And I was just telling her how much I relish that. And she said, well, do you share that with your students? And I said, I think so. I think they know how much I dig them. But I went back to class then. Today, I said, I got to tell you, a colleague of mine told me I just got to share this with you. And, to know that your professors are talking about you behind your backs this way, and respecting you, genuinely respecting you and admiring you and appreciating you and relishing your passion and the good work you're doing and stuff like that. That's a gift. That's such a gift. And it's rare. I have a lot of friends and colleagues who are professors, and I think they're all lucky to have the jobs that they have, but they don't have you guys. And Pitzer students are different. Pitzer attracts a different kind of student, a student that is self-motivated, students that are passionate about making a difference, changing the world, not necessarily driven by dollar signs in their eyes, first and foremost, but about learning how to make the world a better place. And that's really beautiful. I've been teaching for over 30 years at Pitzer, and I never stop appreciating that. Because it's brought forefront for me every day in my teaching.
Wow, that was amazing. I'm almost crying too. You can check out the chat. You're getting some fans. But that's fantastic. And I 100% agree with you. I am an EA major, but I also work in admissions. And I always like to tell people about how passionate the students and the faculty are about, having a positive impact on the world and what a big difference that makes. And like you said, I think there are so many opportunities for students to get involved, for faculty to be actively working within environmental analysis, to provide a little more context into the CASA Pitzer program, which I got to put in a plug for here because it's an amazing program. Even if you don't end up being an EA major, there are so many other ways to take advantage of it. But to describe it in a little more detail, there's it's worth 3 of the 4 credits that you'll take in a semester. So you'll just do that program and then take maybe one other class. And you take these 2 courses about community change and about research methods. There's actually a space in the city of Ontario that you go to take your courses as well. And then you do get to pick an internship. So Huerta del Valle was the internship that I did. It's a community garden. It's in Ontario. They do food justice and food sovereignty work. It's very cool. I even got to practice my Spanish because it's a predominantly Spanish-speaking community there. And that is my other major. So you see how things like start to connect very well there. I was working at the community-supported agriculture part of that program, so preparing boxes of food for people to pick up, and then also conducting research about that program and how it serves its members, conducting interviews and focus groups, and then writing up all of this research in a culminating paper that I wrote for my class. So that's a really good example of these two requirements that Pitzer has, which is social justice theory and social responsibility praxis, that you're learning about social justice theoretically in the classroom, but you're also getting to go out into the world and do something about it, and then reflect back on it in that academic setting. So there's so many opportunities along that line. Similarly with the work that I'm doing with my thesis, being able to get involved in the broader community and be inspired by the amazing work that your professors and students around you are all doing as well. So I think that's a fantastic opportunity.
It's so hard, you guys, to, I wish that you could be visiting campus, right? I wish that Emma and I could be walking around with you, showing you the Redford Conservancy, taking you to the Pitzer Outback Preserve, introducing you to students, meeting the professors. This is really frustrating. I feel for you, trying to, do this whole college thing virtually like this. It's got to be really, really tough. And we can't do what we do justice over Zoom. And I'm sure any other college you're visiting is the same way, of course. But there's something about Pitzer that being on site, and there's something about that energy that happens. And the relationships and the sincerity and all of that is magical. So I hope you get to experience that directly and for yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exciting. We are confirmed that we are going to be coming back in the fall in person at Pitzer, which is fantastic. All of you students will be able to, if you do come to Pitzer, experience that. But yeah, Paul, I would love to if you just provide a little bit more about what has it been like teaching over Zoom this past year and a bit, and what you are looking forward to most about being back on campus. A lot of the classes you were describing sound very much like they would benefit from being in a physical space together. If you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, they will benefit from being in a physical space together, and it's been really hard being over Zoom. It's not my preferred modality at all, and I get wiped out from it. I'm kind of fried after a Zoom session, and I'm sure the students are too. But one thing, again, this is to our students' credit. They are so engaged, they're so present, they're so there that mitigates the distancing that happens over Zoom. And they, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but they have a level of comfort and engagement that makes my job at facilitating a Zoom class much easier. They're able to, I ask my students to, if they can, to unmute themselves so that we're all unmuted, unless you have a dog that's barking in the back or a train that's going by or something like that, then mute yourself. But if you can, keep unmuted so that we can try to be as conversational as possible in our class, so that you can interrupt me when I'm giving a lecture and ask for clarity, or you can provide some elaboration yourself. So I try to be aware of student burnout. And it's not just burnout from Zoom. It's burnout from pandemic. And, students are going through really, really tough times. There's really hard stuff that people are dealing with, some of which I'm privy to, some of which I don't know about, but I can sense it, I can see it, I can feel it. I know that whether or not I'm picking up on it, that there's hard stuff. And I'm trying to be sensitive and aware of that. In each of the classes that I do, I'm trying to have different modalities. I try to engage different modalities. So every class, we have some discussion. Every class, I shouldn't say every, but generally speaking, my classes will consist of some discussion, some lecture, and some asynchronous engagement. Well, not asynchronous. We'll do it in real time. We might watch a film or something like that. We'll do it in real time, but we'll be doing it individually. We'll kind of check off a Zoom for a while. We'll watch a half-hour film, and then we'll come back together and discuss it. So I try to give us different forms of engagement, and again, my students are really forgiving, and I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. I wouldn't want to be learning that way, but they're gracious and they're learning a lot from each other. They're contributing so much. So my experience with it, even though it's not my preferred modality, has actually been pretty darn good. But again, it circles back to the students. It's because of the students.
Thank you for that. And I think that is very 100% true of my experience that has been on Pitzer online this year. I know, just speaking with some folks who go to other schools, my friends from high school talking about, oh, I just like click on to the Zoom class and then I leave because no one's going to notice. And I was like, that is not the experience at Pitzer. You're in a small class and you are participating, and your professor is paying attention and wants to hear from you. And so it is really a unique experience, even when that's on Zoom as well.
But I try to, not only do I ask students to unmute, but I ask them to have their video, their cameras going if they can as well. And sometimes they can't. Sometimes they're not having good internet connection. Yesterday, I had a student who was sick, who was very ill and didn't want to miss class, but also didn't feel up for participating. So she asked if she could leave her camera off. Of course, but if you can, it's good to see other live bodies and be able to look each other in the eye and see that movement and stuff. So I ask for that. I don't require it, but I encourage it.
Absolutely. Yes. So thank you so much, Paul. I'm just going to give one final question. We can kind of wrap up here. Just general kind of advice or guidance for prospective students who may be coming to Pitzer next year, either within EA or beyond, just about kind of how to get the most out of their experience.
Well, the fundamental advice is to engage the resources on campus. Student affairs has tremendous resources. Your professors, your academic advisor, take advantage of office hours. Go and speak with your professors outside of class. Go sit in their office. Yeah, it might be intimidating at first, maybe all the way through, but my colleagues are good, genuine, caring people, and they want you to show up for their office hours. So, they want to engage you outside of the classroom. The classroom is a critical part of what we do at Pitzer, but it's only a part of what we do at Pitzer. And the film series, the lecture series, the co-curricular opportunities, whatever's happening in the dorms, if you're going to be living on campus, which is a luxury if you can pull it off. I very much encourage that. But just deep engagement. The more you can engage yourself in, the resources and opportunities that you're going to have at your disposal for those 4 years of your college career at Pitzer College are like nothing else you're going to have in your life. They're unique. Take advantage of them. You're going to be paying for them. You might as well take advantage of them. And they're really, really rich. And those things are every bit as valuable as what you're going to get out of the kind of traditional academic stuff of going to your classes. That's my fundamental advice.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for being here with us today. And thank you to all the students who had joined in. I also threw my email in the chat. So if any of you do have any follow-up questions about the EA major specifically, or just the Pitzer student experience, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Paul.
I'm sorry. I'll just chime in real quick and say thank you, everybody, for being here. I wish we could engage more. I wish I could see all your faces and hear from you directly, but that's not a format that's going to work with such high numbers, I guess. But anyway, congratulations on being accepted to Pitzer, and I hope to see you on campus next year. So with that, I'll shut up and go ahead.
Thank you, Paul and Emma. And Paul, before you leave and head out, I hope you take a second to look at the chat. We got some lovely messages coming in for you.
Oh, great. Well, how nice. I will. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, you all. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.
And for the rest of our students, and I know Kayla and Olivia are still here, I just want to share a couple of notes about our session this Thursday, which is Student Engagement Day. We have a meet and greet with Student Senate. And if you don't know, Student Senate is a really important organization on campus, as we have a shared governance system. Kayla, who is our elected student body president, Student Senate president, will be moderating that session with our current president, Becca Zimmerman, and a couple other Student Senate folks. So if you're interested in that, definitely tune in at 4 p.m. We also made a student life panel for all of you. So we'll be inviting students from all across campus through different grades and different years, different points of their Pitzer experience, to share their thoughts with you and to answer any questions that you may have. And then we have two sessions, one which is about co-curricular offerings at Pitzer, and then also one with our career services office. So I would definitely encourage you all to come back on Thursday and learn more about what Pitzer has to offer. And on that note, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be dropping a couple links in the chat for you to explore the Claremont area, learn more about Pitzer. We'll stick around for a couple more minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us through the chat. Have a great evening.